In this presentation, we're going to discuss preparation for IRS and Tax-Aide certification. I want to start out by saying the time we put into preparation and certification translates to the quality of service provided to our clients, the taxpayers. The key to achieving certification, besides putting in some time and effort, is to learn which resources to rely on. So for most of our tax preparation certification and actual tax preparation work, there are really just a couple of material resources that we mainly rely on. That's as well as our fellow volunteers. So we're going to discuss certification requirements for all Tax-Aide volunteers, who include client facilitators, tax counselors, and local site and shift coordinators. Now, as we have a good number of fairly recent additions to our volunteer ranks, I'm going to cover some ground that you may have heard before, but this is an opportunity to ensure that everyone, new or experienced, fully understands what's necessary for certification and how to achieve it. But goodness knows there have been some hiccups this year with our main IRS training and testing site, Lincoln Learn. It seems to be operating pretty well right now. There's still a few minor issues. It also seems that none of the problems we experienced last year with our Tax-Aide training application, LMS, have returned. So that's good news. Okay, so we'll start out by looking at the actual certification requirements, what training we need to take, and what tests we need to pass. This discussion will include Massachusetts certification requirements, proficiency test, mandatory training for tax counselors, as well as special requirements for our coordinators. During the course of our discussion, we'll cover available training courses provided by the IRS under the VITA TC umbrella. That's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, Tax Counseling for the Elderly, and Tax-Aide courses located in the AARP Volunteer Portal. We'll also cover additional resources that are available for volunteer use. There are specific certification requirements based on the role or roles that we fill. Well, across the top of this diagram, going from left to right, we can see the training and testing platforms that we use in the first column. Now, L&L for Lincoln Learn, the IRS training and certification site. LMS for the Learning Management System, which is the Tax-Aide training and certification site located in the AARP portal. And Local for Tax-Aide Massachusetts state and district certification requirements. Now, next to the actual certification requirements. These certification requirements are a combination of examinations for the IRS, training courses for Tax-Aide, Massachusetts state proficiency problems for our tax counselors, which are 4 tax return exercises, and mandatory presentation in Massachusetts tax law also for our tax counselors. Now, that presentation is scheduled in the afternoon of January 12th. It'll be recorded for anyone who can't attend online. We'll cover all of these certification requirements in this presentation. Next, we can see the volunteer roles: client facilitator, counselor, which includes quality reviewers, and local and shift coordinators. So the way we would read this is to simply look at the role. Let's say client facilitator, and look down the column under that role. We can see that our client facilitators need to pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct test. That's the abbreviation VSOC, which is located in the IRS Lincoln Learn site. Then complete the policy and procedures training located in the LMS site on the AARP portal, and also train for and pass the intake and interview and quality review test. That's labeled I/I and QR train and test. And finally, they'd need to take the technology and security training in LMS. So a total of 4 requirements for full certification as a client facilitator. Now, our tax counselors would need to complete the same 4 requirements as our client facilitators, and in addition, they need to complete the mass proficiency exercises, those 4 tax returns, the IRS advanced tax test, and the state training, which again, it's a mandatory presentation on mass tax law. It's about 2 hours in length. Now, assuming they're certifying to be tax counselors, our local and shift coordinators must also complete the IRS Site Coordinators Test and the Site Coordinator Training in LMS. Now, at the bottom of the slide is a section for other required LMS courses. I'll explain more in the next slide, but just understand that sites can choose which service delivery model, or SDM, they want to use. Most sites use an in-person model, where the taxpayer is present throughout the preparation of the tax returns. So a fairly common service delivery model is a drop-off model, where the taxpayer drops off tax documentation, the return is prepared, and the taxpayer returns to pick up the completed return and their paperwork when the return is finished. Now, there are other less common models, but the Y1ST, or Y first, means that the first time a model is being used at a site, volunteers must be trained in that model. So what are we seeing here is that client facilitators, counselors, and local and shift coordinators would all need to complete training in a specific service delivery model if their site chose to use that model. Here's another view of just Tax-Aide training requirements. Please ignore the electronic return originator rule. Now note the key in the upper left. Y is required, REC is recommended, Y1ST for year first is required if first year using this, and R1ST, or recommended first, is recommended for the first year. We can see they're required for all training columns in the top left. Then they're required for some, which shows the training for local and shift coordinators. It also shows service delivery models. So again, if we were at a site and we chose to use a, let's say, one visit scan model for the first time, we would need to complete Tax-Aide training on that service delivery model. You can also see recommended and optional training. That includes training and reimbursements, which would be useful for all new volunteers, and really all volunteers. It shows you how to actually fill out an expense report and get reimbursed for mileage or other expenses you may incur as a volunteer. So if this is your first year working as a volunteer for AARP Tax-Aide Group, you might want to go through this reimbursement training. It's on the portal under the training tab. Without the training, submitting a reimbursement, actually even with the training, it can be a little complicated sometimes. So reimbursement training may be helpful, and once you've taken it, there's no need to take it again unless you totally forget how to do it. There's no rush on taking this type of training. Most volunteers wait until the end of the tax season, so they only input one expense report. And before I forget, make sure to keep track of your miles traveling as a volunteer. The reimbursement rate is 60, right now anyway, is 65.5 cents per mile, which can really add up. Session management is an online tool that some sites use for setting up appointments. When set up properly, the taxpayers themselves can actually access the software and set up their own appointments. Now, I would obviously recommend this training if your site's going to use session management. You might also want to take the training if you want to explore what benefits session management might have for your site. Intro to Chromebooks is very useful for new counselors if you've never used a Chromebook. I use PCs and Macs my whole life. I still have issues trying to effectively use my Chromebook. So if you have any problems using the training on the portal, be sure to notify your local coordinator, who will notify Maria, our district coordinator. Let's talk about AARP Foundation Tax-Aide resources that are provided for our counselors, both new and returning. So first of all, let's discuss the National Tax Training Committee, or NTTC. They have a self-study program which many of you are already familiar with. A number of you were involved in self-study training program in the fall and maybe in past years. This year, they divided the program into 3 study guides, one intended for new volunteers, one for new and returning experienced volunteers, and a third for experienced volunteers only. Our program was based on the first 2 guides. So the NTTC workbook is another resource that they produce that's just a book of practice problems and quizzes to test counselor knowledge of federal tax law. They're divided into basic and more complex categories. A very valuable feature is a matrix that displays specific areas of the tax law that are covered in specific tax returns. So this allows the counselors to test their knowledge in areas they may feel a little more need to focus. And one of the most valuable resources provided is the Qualifying Child, Qualifying Relative resource tool that can be invaluable when trying to resolve dependency issues and filing status questions. That's the 8-page resource tool provided to every counselor that allows counselors to move through flowchart decision trees in order to determine who's a qualifying child or qualifying relative, and again, correct filing status. These are about the 3 biggest resources provided by the NTTC they'll be using to prepare for certification. In the resource library on the AARP volunteer portal, you'll find a folder, actually a red training folder, that contains lots of information, including the IRS Volunteer Resource Guide, it's publication 4012, with notes from the National Tax Screening Committee that is specifically for Tax-Aide. Now, also located in the library is the Volunteer Training Guide, IRS publication 4491, again with revisions added by the NTTC for Tax-Aide. There are also online training videos and PowerPoint presentations on a variety of tax and program-related topics. The Tax-Aide Scope Manual can be found in the library. It covers exactly what's in scope for the Tax-Aide program and what's not in scope. The Tax-Aide Policies and Procedures Manual is also in the library, as well as many other helpful documents. So I suggest that when you have some time, you take a look around. They've really done a great job of assembling anything that we could possibly ever want in terms of resources related to the Tax-Aide program. As far as state and local materials, Maria will be providing a presentation on Massachusetts state law, and she's probably going to be going over this again. So I just want to say that there is a Massachusetts Tax-Aide website, and it's called, or its link is at mataxaide.org, and website has a lot of useful links on Massachusetts tax law. So we'll let Maria cover that when she provides her presentation later this week. Now, for years, the IRS has maintained a website called Link and Learn. It can be found at the link listed on this slide. This is where the online test for certification can be found. So this is a place where you'll go to actually certify to become a client facilitator, a counselor, and or a coordinator. There are also training lessons there. We're going to look at this site in detail in just a few minutes. There are training lessons there on pretty much every topic dealing with federal tax law. Now, some Tax-Aide sites rely exclusively on using the lessons in Link and Learn for training their volunteers. Now, in addition, there are also links to various IRS forms and publications that are located on the Link and Learn site. I'm not leaving client facilitators out of the discussion. All you need to know on the IRS side is you need to pass the volunteer standards of conduct and the intake, interview, and quality review exams. They have 10 questions each. You need 8 correct at a minimum to pass each test. So there are links to the training documents on the Link and Learn site. For tax counselors, ignore the basic test. It's contained in the advanced test that we'll be taking. The advanced test is required for all tax counselors. Now, there's an optional experienced volunteer test. It doesn't replace our requirement to pass the advanced test. The IRS certification tests that are online in Link and Learn are also available in print as Form 6744, which some of you may have. Now, a recommendation is to first take the test on paper before entering the values in Link and Learn. Keep in mind, the paper test booklet was printed in October, and the electronic tests in Link and Learn may have been updated since the paper test booklet was generated. So there may be differences between the two. So make sure if you do take paper test that you compare the questions before entering any of the answers. Now, my understanding is the IRS makes changes when it discovers that the wording in a question is confusing people. So there's obviously no way to correct it in the paper test. Just be forewarned. The IRS also provides these optional specialty courses and tests for military certification, international certification, foreign student certification, and Puerto Rico certification. Now, other than self-education, there's probably little value in passing these tests and being certified in those areas, as the locations where we volunteer primarily see seniors and some non-seniors, but not a lot of people from these categories. So again, if you want to expand your tax knowledge, feel free to certify in these areas after fulfilling the necessary requirements that we have. Now that we talked about the Internal Revenue Service requirements for certification, we also need to talk about the Tax-Aide requirements as far as training and what courses we all need to take in order to be fully certified. We complete these requirements by going to the Learning Management System, or LMS. That's in the AARP portal and clicking on the Training tab in the portal. Now, there are a variety of courses that are available within LMS. Some of them are based on your role and are required. Others are not required, but they're available for you to take if you'd like. So just click on the Content Library tab once you're in LMS. Now, the volunteer portal tracks our training progress toward completion of the assigned courses. In the past, we've had some issues with LMS, but this year there don't seem to be any issues. But if you do encounter any issues, let your local coordinator know right away, and they'll escalate any issues to Maria, our district coordinator. So the certification process requires that prospective tax counselors prepare 4 intermediate level Massachusetts-focused tax returns. Now, they can start by going to masstaxaide.org and from there selecting the Volunteers Only tab. You'll need a password to enter that section, so the password is capital M, capital A, 2023, left parent, asterisk, right parent. You can see it on the slide. Select the 2023 workbook, and from there you'll need to select the 4 returns shown on the slide: Brown, Behringer, Sterling, and Carr. Again, they're intermediate level practice returns. Now the answers will be available on the website, so you can check your work against the answer key. If you find that your answers don't coincide with the answers in the answer key, try to determine what's wrong. If you're close, it isn't necessary to have the numbers exactly right, but try to come close. Once you're close, or as close as you think you can get without spending a lot more time in a return, follow the direction of your coordinator in providing the results. So at our site, I ask each counselor to let me know if they have the correct answers or not, and try to work with the counselors to resolve any issues they may have. If you spend more than 10 or 15 minutes trying to resolve a problem, I check with your mentor if you have one, and then your local coordinator. Now, these are intended to improve our skills, not frustrate volunteers. So they aren't graded, just do your best. Your coordinator will pass word up the chain when you've completed the proficiency exercises. All District 6 counselors are required to attend the Massachusetts Tax Law training on January 12th. Now, for those that can't attend the training, which is conducted online using Google Meet, it'll be recorded and made available for viewing. One way or the other, viewing this training is mandatory. Let your coordinator know when you've completed this requirement. Okay, now let's get down to the nitty-gritty and walk through how we'll complete our IRS certification requirements. First, access the Lincoln Learn webpage and sign in to Lincoln Learn. Now, all volunteers, including client facilitators, must create an account and record their answers in Lincoln Learn. There's a new site for tax year 2023. Don't use the old site. The URL for the new test site is at the bottom of the slide. If you had an account last year, you'll need to create a password for the new site. Click Forgot Password and enter the email address associated with your account. Now, instructions will be sent to that email address. If you haven't received an email after 15 minutes, please check your junk mail folder email from linklearnsupporttest@redcedarconsultancy.com. Red Cedar is the company that maintains the Lincoln Learn site. Here's a screen where you can submit the request to set up a new password. Don't use special characters in your new password. Once you're able to access Lincoln Learn, please verify your My Account information, as some values and selections were not being carried over from the old account. If you can't recover your username or password, follow instructions for new volunteers. For returning volunteers, after you sign in, click on the My Account tab and update the years of service and any other information that's missing or has changed. I'm going to show you the values to enter in just a moment. Once you've entered the correct information, then click the Save button. Please note, volunteers who are registering for the first time will click on the Register button. New volunteers will need to create an account. They do this by checking on the Create Account, and this screen will appear. In Group, select O2 TCE AARP Volunteer for Group. Click on that button. On this slide, for the question, do you require activation of multiple OPI pins? Click on No. Do you want to take the Site Coordinator certification? Select Yes for Site Coordinator if you're a local, site, or shift coordinator and need that training. So a link to the IRS training will then display on your home page. Are you an instructor? Yes or no? For most, click No. Are you an IRS Spec Territory Manager? The answer is no. Do you plan to volunteer through the VITA TCE program? The answer to that is yes. Next, for training source, select Publication 4491. You can also select Lincoln Learn from the drop-down as well. This is the advice of Tax-Aide, is to select Publication 4491. And then complete the remaining fields with your information. Anything marked with an asterisk must be completed. Your name and address have to match your government-issued photo identification. So first name, last name here. In the fields displayed on this slide, enter a username of your choice, a password of your choice, and your preferred email address. Then enter your address information. Now, guidance in generating a password is provided in the red box on the right. In these fields, add a phone number if you wish. The time zone is Eastern. Partner organization name is AARP Tax-Aide. Update the years you've volunteered to include the upcoming tax season. Now, if you're a first-year volunteer, enter 1 for years you've volunteered. Unless you're seeking credit for training, as professional tax preparers might, leave the fields below years you've volunteered alone. Then hit the Register button. Now, if you are an enrolled agent, CPA, or in any other category where you'd want to use this training for continuing education credits, please let Maria, our district coordinator, know. Okay, so we've created accounts. We've logged into Lincoln Learn. Now, the first time you log into Lincoln Learn, you'll notice there are tabs at the top. Circular 230, Basic, Advanced, Military, International, Puerto Rico, and Foreign Student. It probably will default to Circular 230 the first time you go in. Make sure that the Advanced tab is selected. I think Circular 230 and Basic certifications aren't used by Tax-Aide at all anymore. You may review the training PDFs for the Volunteer Standards of Conduct and the Intake Interview and Quality Review courses by clicking on the links on the right of the screen. Now, you must pass the Volunteer Standards of Conduct exam and the Intake Interview and Quality Review exam before taking any other test if you need to. Click on the name of the test to see the description. Now, a box will pop up. You may need to turn off pop-up blockers in your browser. In that box, you'll see a launch button. You click on the launch button to start the test. Again, that launch button won't appear unless you've passed the prerequisite tests that are required. So if you need to take the advanced exam, you have to finish the standards of conduct and the intake interview test first. And you read instructions on the introductory page and click Start Assessment. Client facilitators, you need to take the 2023 Volunteer Standards of Conduct exam and the 2023 Intake Interview and Quality Review exam. Counselors will need to take the advanced tax exam. Coordinators will also need to take the coordinators exam. You needed to click the Yes button in your account in order to take that exam. So if you didn't click where it asks, do you want to take the coordinators exam, it will not appear. Go back to your account if you need to do so and click the Yes button. Then the coordinator course should appear on your list of exams. I want to point out that information on the subjects covered in the exams can be found in the IRS publication 4961 for Volunteer Standards of Conduct and publication 5101 for the intake, interview, and quality review process. A main reference for tax policy is IRS publication 4012. Now during tax season, while generating returns, we use the NTTC version, which is modified to reflect Tax-Aide scope. For the advanced tax exam, we use the IRS version, as that's the version the IRS uses. Okay, you click Launch. This is a screen that will appear. When you want to begin the test, you click the Start Assessment button on the lower left. Now, you must score 80% to pass each test. We recommend you complete all scenarios. This is for the tax counselors. Complete all scenarios and mark your answers in Form 6744 test booklet first before going online to record your answers. If you don't have a copy of the 6744, it's available online. You can print pages. And it's in our shared Google folder. Now, it can be helpful to read and answer the retest questions at the same time. Don't guess. Though this is an open book test. Use the training materials. You have all the time you need. You can't consult with any other person in the exam itself. Now, you can always discuss with your mentor or local coordinator concerning tax questions, but not specific questions on the exam. Now, read the online questions carefully to ensure they match, as we mentioned earlier, the test booklet, if you're using the test booklet. All questions are multiple choice or fill in the blank. Now, when entering a dollar value, use only numbers. Now, you can use a minus sign if needed, and always round to the nearest whole dollar. So remember, if you're going to round up, it's 50 cents or more. If you're rounding down, it's 49 cents or less. Don't type a space before or after the value. Press Tab after entering the value. After choosing an answer, wait for the Next button to turn gray to black before checking it, or I should say clicking it, or your answer may not be recorded. So check your answers on the review page before submitting them. You can change them before submitting, but make sure to write down your answers. When your score is calculated, you'll be provided a summary that shows which questions you answered correctly and which, if any, are not correct. You won't be provided the correct answer, so if you get it wrong, you won't know what the right answer was, unless it's a true or false. Now, knowing a wrong answer can help if a retest is required. You don't have to complete the test in one sitting. You can exit a test at any point by clicking the Exit Course in the upper right and signing out. You have 2 tries to pass each test. If you don't pass a specific test, you got to take and pass the retest, which has different questions. They're similar, but different. Now, we recommend confer with your coordinator before taking a retest, as failing it will disqualify you from any position requiring that test. So no matter what, if you don't pass a test the first time, before taking the test again, make sure you check with your coordinator, whether that's your site or local. All right, congratulations, you passed. Now what? When you completed and passed all the required tests and any optional tests you plan to take, you must electronically sign your volunteer agreement, that's the 13615 form, and then save it. We ask that you attach a copy of your agreement to an email and send it to your local coordinator for her or his approval. Coordinators should send their signed forms to Maria. Now, check your downloads folder for the file or check My Drive if you're using a Tax-Aide Chromebook. So, page 2 of the form contains your electronic signature as well as the results of your test. So, as shown on the slide, first thing you do, number 1, is to check the sign box to electronically sign your agreement. And number 2, click here to create a file containing the electronic copy or a copy of your volunteer agreement. And that file will then be downloaded. Here's the first page of the Volunteer Standards of Conduct Agreement that you're going to sign. That's Form 13615. It's pretty much boilerplate. There's nothing here in the first page you have to do as far as signatures or anything, but you do have to be aware of what it says because you're signing off on this entire agreement. So there are 6 standards of conduct that you're agreeing to. Number 1 is to follow the quality site requirements, and there are 10 of them. Now, hopefully you've seen them and have a pretty good understanding what they cover. Number 2, you won't accept payment, solicit donations, or accept refund payments for federal or state return preparation from customers. Number 3, you'll not solicit business from taxpayers you assist, or you will not use information that you gained about them for any direct or indirect personal benefit for you or any other specific individual or organization. So you'll not use your volunteer position to gain business for yourself or your friends and relatives. Number 4, will not knowingly prepare false tax returns. You get in trouble if you knowingly, or you can get in trouble if you knowingly produce a false return. Number 5, you're not engaged in criminal, infamous, dishonest, notoriously disgraceful conduct or any other conduct deemed to have a negative effect on the VITA TCE program, including Tax-Aide. Number 6, you'll treat all taxpayers in a professional, courteous, and respectful manner. Well, those are 6 standards of conduct that you're agreeing to follow. Now let's look at page 2. The second page is shown here, and it'll be pre-filled with your personal information, the results of your test, and your electronic signature. That's a pretty busy page. You'll see your name, volunteer position, email address, daytime phone number if you provided it, and number of years volunteering. Your signature would be in the red circle once you click the box that I just showed you in the previous slide. It's automatically added along with the date, although the date's not displayed on this slide. Then you can see the courses that were passed. They're marked with a P for pass. Now there's a section for continuing education credits down below. If you do need to request the continuing credits, then again, please let Maria, a district coordinator, know. Again, the test results show only pass-fail. Your local coordinator will not see your actual test scores. If you pass the site coordinator or other tests, then these will also have a P in the box, the appropriate box. So your approving official, that's your local coordinator for sites and district coordinator for local coordinators, must verify and sign the form. Electronic or typed signatures are allowed. When you've completed all additional certification requirements, your certification will be logged in the Tax-Aide volunteer portal. Now again, your volunteer agreement will be created as a PDF file. And you're going to send this file to your local coordinator or district coordinator if you are a coordinator, so that you get recognition for having passed all the tests and are fully certified. There are certificates that are generated for each test passed. Feel free to print or save these for your own purposes, but do not send any of these up the chain. All we need and want is your volunteer agreement. We saw how Lincoln Learn provides access to the IRS exams and documents related to the exams. But Lincoln Learn website offers a lot more. In addition to logging into Lincoln Learn, there's a lot we can do without logging in. So on the right-hand side are some valuable tools in the quick links box. You can see there's a link to the Lincoln Learn tax lessons. We can view any of a number of lessons related to federal tax law. It actually takes quite a while to go through them all, but it's worth it if you ever have the time. There's a link to the certification test and retest documentation. So you can look at publication 6744 if you don't have the paper version. The paper version, by the way, is normally delivered to returning counselors by your local coordinator. So new trainees should expect a paper copy next year. Now we also access the training guide document from here as well as Practice Lab. And without signing an account, anyone can access the documentation for the Volunteer Standards of Conduct training and the Intake Interview and Quality Review training. Okay, for tax counselors, especially new tax counselors, in the course of answering questions in the advanced tax test, you'll need to generate tax returns for some of the scenarios. Now to do this, you use Practice Lab. For anyone just starting, you access Practice Lab via the address at the bottom of the slide. Now a screen will be displayed requesting a password on the left here, which is TrainProWeb, all capital letters. Upon entering this password, another screen will be displayed requesting a username and password. That's on the right. You'll need to create an account before being able to sign in. So make sure your Practice Lab password is strong. Although the minimum length is 6 alphanumeric characters, your password should be much longer. I think you can go up to 15 characters. Now, after creating your account and signing in, you'll then see the Practice Lab homepage, which contains links to training courses and a link into the practice area. If we click on the Go to Practice Area button, we'll see a screen that looks like the following. And here's what our Practice Lab welcome screen looks like. Make sure that the year selected is 2023. And now for AARP portal training. Here's what the portal looks like, at least at the time this presentation was prepared. Now, accessing the portal requires that you set up an account. You can do this by selecting the Create Account link on this page. When you select the option to create an account, you'll then be asked to provide some personal information and create a password. Your email address will be used as your username. So every time you sign in, you're required to provide your username, password, and key in the letters displayed near the bottom of the sign-in page. Remember to do that. When you successfully sign in, the AARP portal main page will be displayed. Notice there are tabs near the top, including a tab for training. So you would select the Training tab. Once you've selected the training option, a page will appear that displays the status Tax-Aide training courses that have been assigned to you. Notice you might have courses to do, overdue, or completed. Now the status on this slide indicates I've completed 3 courses because I'm a tax counselor and a local coordinator. Most volunteers should have been assigned 2 courses, Policy and Procedures and Technology and Security. Now if you want to see all the courses that are available besides those that are assigned to you, in the upper left corner is a Content Library tab. If you click on that, you'll see a complete list of available courses that you can take if they interest you. All right, launch each course and follow the discussion. These courses aren't graded, you just need to complete them. You can't skip to the end of a section, you must go through all of the material. Now, questions are asked along the way to help ensure that you comprehend the material. If you have limited time, you can start a course and exit at any point. When you return to the course, it'll restart where you left off. Now, once you've completed a course, it'll be marked complete. We don't need to see printed certificates of completion for these courses. Your local coordinator can see which courses you've been assigned and which courses you've completed. But do let your local coordinator know when you've completed all the courses in the ARP portal. So note that on the slide we can see actual courses. The slide shows 3 of the completed courses. Selecting the Not Started or In Progress and Overdue tabs in My Training section would show courses currently in those statuses. Well, that concludes this presentation. We'll now pause for any questions or comments you may have.